Who are we missing?
I was there last time.
I know a couple times when I first came, I go up there and I think, why are they all out here? I didn't know.
You want to do that? Sure. All right. Welcome to Kent County Levy Court meeting this evening. We're holding a meeting at Kent County Administrative Complex at 555 Bay Road in Dover, Delaware. Levy Court Chambers, room 203. Today is Tuesday, February 21st, 2023. Before I open the actual meeting, I'll turn it over to the county administrator to explain how those that would like to join us by WebEx and or phone can do so. Mr. Quayle.
Thank you, Mr. President. Participants can either join us by computer or by telephone throughout the course of this meeting. There will be opportunities for public comments from those attending in person, as well as online at designated times. For those joining us by phone, press *3, which will raise your electronic hand so our operator can identify you and bring you into the meeting. Pressing *6 will mute and unmute your line. If you're on a computer, at the bottom of the screen, you'll see the hand and microphone icons, and we ask that you use those at the appropriate time. We also ask that all comments from our guests be preceded by stating your name and address for the record. This meeting is being recorded and will follow all the rules of procedure adopted by Levy Court, as well as Mason's Rules of Order. Mr. President, back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Quayle. At this time, I'll call the committee meetings to order. We do have 7 commissioners present, the county administrator, and county attorney. And so before we actually go into the first committee, I'd like to turn it over to Commissioner Sweeney.
Thank you, Mr. President. Last week we lost Betty Lou McKenna, our recorder of deeds, for more than 20 years, as well as an employee for more than 20 years. Her funeral and services are Friday, and I'd like to ask for a moment of silence for Ms. McKenna. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. At this time, we'll go right into the administration committee. I'll turn it over to Commissioner Angel, who's chairman.
Thank you, Mr. President. The opioid settlement update, if we could have those gentlemen come forth that are going to present.
How are you? Good evening. How you doing?
Doing well, thank you. Thank you.
Oh, I got my songs. Perfect. Thank you very much. Good evening. I'm Owen Lefcon. I'm a Deputy Attorney General with the Delaware Department of Justice. I am the Director of our Fraud and Consumer Protection Division in the DOJ, and I oversee the state's opioid litigation.
Good evening. I'm Jamie Nutter with Parkowski, Gherkin, Swayze, and my firm and I served as litigation counsel, special counsel to the county in a number of the opioid cases, including 4 of the 5 that will be discussed tonight that have now reached a settlement.
So tonight I'm going to talk to you about the five new settlements that the state reached in December that the Kent County as well as 9 other subdivisions in the state have opportunity to join. I've got a PowerPoint that I'm going to walk through. I've got some copies I can also hand out if that would be helpful. Sure. Let's see. Well, I'll just pass them all around except for one, and we'll see if I have enough. I think I do. With apologies, this PowerPoint is sort of a merging of a number of PowerPoints. I believe I actually spoke to the Levy Court about a year and a half ago on the first round of settlements with the 3 large distributors and Johnson & Johnson at that time. So this presentation has a couple refresher slides from that presentation for those of you who don't have a photographic memory or weren't there at the time, and then some updates based on the new settlements. So this is my first refresher slide, which is just a reminder of the general landscape that the state. Sorry, that's my second slide. That we originally, when I presented, I talked about how we anticipated opioid settlement funds coming in from a variety of sources. At that time, I was talking about the distributors and 1 manufacturer. Today, we're talking about 3 pharmacies and 2 additional manufacturers. The goal, as we've negotiated the settlements, jointly, the states sort of on a national basis jointly negotiated the settlements with subdivision counsel for subdivisions nationwide, and then even within Delaware, was to maximize the amount of money coming into each state, including Delaware. Yes, sir.
Pharmacies?
Pharmacies. So today, I'll be talking about settlements that the state has reached with CVS, Walgreens, and Walmart.
I did not know that pharmacies were, I thought they were just the pharmaceuticals, the big pharma, not.
No, and I'll talk a little bit about the structure of our case on the next slide, which may be helpful. So the goal, the defendants in all of these cases, the distributors, the manufacturers, the pharmacies, they want global peace, right? They've been sued by states nationwide, and they've been sued by subdivisions nationwide, and they want to maximize the number of settling entities with them. And so, in order for Delaware as a collective to get the most amount of money and on the fastest timescale possible, it's imperative that we have everybody who is eligible to participate in the settlement to participate. So that includes the state, it includes the litigating subdivisions, of which Kent County is one, and then it includes any other subdivisions over 10,000 in population. And I'll touch on that a bit more. The timeline, these monies, and this is true of the new settlements too, we're looking at money coming in over a long time period. So a lot of the structure here is setting up a structure that's going to stand the test of time and last for nearly 2 decades when we're talking about some of these settlements. So this is just a quick refresher on our cases, and this I'll touch on. The state did what was called a supply chain suit. So we sued in one lawsuit the manufacturers of the opioids, the distributing companies that distribute them, sort of the middlemen, and then the pharmacies that dispense them. A number of other lawsuits were similar. The lawsuit that you filed here in Kent was similar in that regard, and you named many of the same defendants as the state named. In addition to our lawsuits, there have been a number of bankruptcies that happened. I'll touch on them as we go through this presentation, but Purdue, Mallinckrodt, and Endo are the big manufacturers that have found themselves in bankruptcy largely as a result of these lawsuits. So, quick update on the settlements to date. So distributors and Johnson & Johnson, so the first 2 line items there are what I talked about a year and a half ago with you. McKinsey was a settlement that was just the state. It did not involve any subdivisions. And then Mallinckrodt was another defendant in our suits, but they filed bankruptcy, and Mallinckrodt they're a generic manufacturer of opioids. They've emerged from bankruptcy, and their first payments, like the payments from the other defendants, are starting to flow into the opioid settlement, prescription opioid settlement distribution fund, which is overseen by the statewide commission, and that Kent County's representative participates in. This is a cash flow projection of those settlements to date. And so the real, you can see the time frame. We're looking at some of the distributor money not coming in until 2038. It's a long time period, but it's also significant money up front. Highlighted there, you'll see the actual money that is already sitting in the distribution fund, waiting for distribution by the commission. Just the update on sort of where things stand. These were the remaining cases. So there's the Purdue. We all, both the state and Kent County had sued Purdue. The state separately sued the Sackler family. Purdue went into bankruptcy. The Sackler family is contributing money to that bankruptcy plan in order to get a release and effectively settle their suits as well. That is being litigated currently. We objected to the bankruptcy plan and appealed it. We won our appeal. We subsequently settled with, we being a group of 9 states that included Delaware. We subsequently settled with the Sackler family for them to contribute an additional $1 billion to the plan, and that settlement and everything else is currently subject to an additional appeal that we are no longer part of because we settled, but we're waiting to hear from the Second Circuit in New York on that. Endo is another manufacturer that filed for bankruptcy. We support the bankruptcy plan there, and we anticipate that we'll see about $2 million from that plan. I forgot to mention the Purdue plan. With that additional $1 billion, Delaware will see $45 million if that gets approved as we settled it. Pharmacies, Teva and Allergan, that's what we're here to talk about today, so we'll talk a lot more about them as well. And do feel free to interrupt me with questions. Yes.
Commissioner Sweeney?
Thanks, sir. These, the bankruptcies, they're just restructuring bankruptcies. They're not bankruptcies, I'm going out of business, right?
They are restructuring, but the management is totally changing, and they are subject to significant changes. They often are, when they come out of bankruptcy, they're getting out of the opioid business. So that piece is getting removed.
Thank you.
Okay, so key deal points. So this is the 5 settlements that we're here to talk about today. So I'll just repeat who the defendants are. I didn't list them on this slide. I apologize for that. They're listed later in the presentation, but I was, like I said, merging different PowerPoints. So again, it's the 3 large pharmacies, Walgreens, Walmart, and CVS, and then 2 manufacturers that are, I don't fully understand their business relationship, but they are tied together somewhat. Teva and Allergan are 2. They're both opioid manufacturers, but they've had some sort of interwoven business dealings over the years, such that the settlements are tied together. The settlements altogether, we expect to see, assuming we achieve that maximum participation of all 10 subdivisions to sign on. More than $80 million from these settlements coming into Delaware over time. Our office was one of the leadership states in negotiating these settlements. So much of the past year for me has been working to bring these home. As with prior settlements, the amount of money that comes into Delaware will be determined by how many litigating. We've got 4 litigating subdivisions, including Kent in the state, how many litigating subdivisions participate, as well as how many subdivisions over 10,000. So that's our mantra on these presentations, which is full subdivision participation means more money faster. As with the previous settlements, the money is required to be spent on opioid abatement. and prevention. And as with the previous settlements, there's a exhibit to those settlements. Exhibit E. If you've attended any of the commission meetings, I've mentioned it there. Though Exhibit E is about a 15-page document that lays out what opioid abatement means. So it's a broad concept. It covers a whole bunch of different things that you can conceive of as being relevant to abating the opioid crisis, but it importantly is not roads or bridges or other things that legislators might otherwise want to spend money on. So that was a lesson learned from the tobacco settlement. We did well with the tobacco settlement here in Delaware, but many states found that their tobacco money ended up going to be spent on non-public health issues. So that was a key point. These opioid monies are to be restricted to opioid abatement. There will be separate pots of money in these 5 deals to cover attorneys' fees and costs, so we don't expect that any of the money will be diverted for that. Next slide. This is a refresher point from the last presentation. The sort of the way Delaware's portion was determined, not just based on population, but also on the harm to Delaware, as this was a nationwide compromise on sort of where we end up. So Delaware actually comes out, we've got about 0.33% of the population nationwide, but in these settlements, we're getting about 0.5%, sometimes slightly above 0.5% in terms of the amount of money nationwide, because we are such a hard-hit state. So if you think about 0.33% to 0.5, it sounds like a small difference, but it's like 150% of what we would otherwise have gotten on a pure population basis, because I mean, it's not a happy point, just because we are so hard hit, and it's been such a crisis for us. And then within Delaware, Kent, along with the state and the 9 other subdivisions, executed the Roads Map Agreement, which is our state subdivision agreement, and I'll touch on that later, but that is what governs our intrastate allocation of funds.
Alan.
Mr. Sweeney?
Thank you, sir. So there are 4 subdivisions that have signed on, and 6 others have not.
No. So my apologies. So there are 4 subdivisions that filed lawsuits.
Okay.
There are 6 subdivisions that didn't file lawsuits, but nonetheless, because of their size, because they're over 10,000 in population, are required to participate in the settlements in order for Delaware to get the most money. All 10 joined the previous settlements with distributors and Johnson & Johnson, and we hope and expect that to be the case this time as well.
But they did not have to file a lawsuit.
They did not have to file a lawsuit, so that this was a subject of intense negotiation among the states and the defendants. But the defendants, having seen more than 3,000 subdivisions nationwide file suit against them, wanted not just those who filed suit to join the settlement, but basically anybody who posed a credible threat of a meaningful lawsuit. So they chose 10,000 population as the cutoff. Any subdivision above that amount, they wanted to join the settlement.
I can remember when we had this discussion 2 years ago, I thought that those subdivisions were no-brainers. They were going to file a lawsuit, but they just didn't, which is kind of a little strange. They wouldn't
The
have.
legislature did pass this piece of legislation in 2001 that put a bar date in that sort of cut off the authority of local governments after that bar date in 2021 to bring separate lawsuits, because of a fear that if there were separate lawsuits, it might take down, because they knew the structure of the settlements that were being negotiated, and that if others were then to file suit, it could potentially diminish the amount of recovery to the state. So there is a statutory bar date
Okay.
in the code now.
Yes.
That went into effect about 2 years ago.
That's correct.
All right, thank you.
So I talked about Roads Map Agreement, which is our state subdivision agreement. The other piece is Senate Bill 166, which was the legislation that Jamie just mentioned. Senate Bill 166 did prevent any subdivision that hadn't filed suit from filing suit, but it also set up the Prescription Opioid Settlement Distribution Commission and the fund, as well as the local government subcommittee requirement there as well. The goal here was to build consensus around spending the money in a statewide manner with stakeholders, not just the state saying, "Hey, we got this money. Let the legislature figure out how to do it," but rather create a commission that was outside of that process and involved subdivision input, meaningful subdivision input, stakeholder input, and input from the state as well. Importantly, to keep the money out of the general fund, it allows the settlement monies to come directly to the commission, so the general fund doesn't touch the money. If there are questions at the bottom, Susan Holloway is the program director for the Settlement Commission. If there are any questions about the workings of the commission itself, Susan is a great resource, particularly about the grant process and any aspects like that. And I mentioned the roads map agreement. This is just a quick overview of that. You have the 10 subdivisions that I mentioned are all listed here. You have your 4 litigating subdivisions as well as your 6 other subdivisions over 10,000. The roads map agreement, just really quickly, what it says is that everybody who joins the roads map agreement gets to be a member of the local government subcommittee of the commission. Everybody agrees, the state and the subdivisions included, that any money that otherwise would have been going to them under the settlements is all going to go to the commission. We're going to treat it as one big pot for Delaware to be distributed by the commission through this stakeholder process. Okay, now we'll get to the new settlements, the details. So here we have 5 columns. The first 3 are the 3 pharmacies. The next 2 are Teva and Allergan. The total settlement numbers are up at the top. Those are nationwide numbers, abatement numbers. So you'll see the Walmart settlement was $2.3 billion. CVS was nearly $4.3 billion. Walgreens was nearly $4.8 billion. Teva, well, I'll touch on Teva last because of that extra text. Allergan was $1.8 billion, and then Teva was $2.9 billion, but in addition, they're also contributing $1.2 billion of naloxone product in addition. So it's actually, the number is larger. It's at a discounted rate. There's some funky math there, but the point is that the Teva number is actually larger than 2.9 million, and depending on what the market price for naloxone is, it sort of will fluctuate. You'll see the next line in the chart shows sort of the percentage of the settlement coming to Delaware. So when I said, 0.5%, you see it's around there. It kind of fluctuates. And that calculation is what you get the highlighted third line. That is the actual amount of money that Delaware will see from each of these settlements if we get full subdivision participation, so all 10 subdivisions participating. The next line shows the length of each settlement, sort of how long the payments are going to be made over what period of time. You'll see Walgreens, which is in more challenging financial position than some of the others, is paying out over 15 years. Walmart, which has a very strong financial position, and we're very pleased with this, is paying all in 1 year. So that $11.8 million from Walmart, we should, assuming we get full participation, is going to be in the commission's fund by the end of 2023, which is very exciting. In addition, each of the settlements have injunctive relief. That's really important. Validating prescriptions, red flag processes where pharmacists have to red flag, and then some also automated red flag processes that the pharmacies at the corporate level have to put in place. And that's, the money is important, but making sure that the dispensing practices going forward are not going to exacerbate the crisis is just as important. Any questions on this slide before I move on? There's a lot of data. Yes.
Thanks. In your opinion, is this going to help? These are a lot of punitive damages, but is it going to help?
So I think that the money is meaningful, and it's a meaningful amount for the commission to deliberate about and do some big things. And that's my personal hope, that we're thinking about prevention. And I think if the commission is able to think big in terms of how to prevent a further addiction, I think that could be really exciting. It's an opportunity to think outside the box.
Yeah.
And importantly, this speaks to why we've set it up this way in Delaware, which I think other states perhaps are not as well positioned to do, that it's all going into one pot, and we can think big with one big pot rather than dividing it up in little bits and pieces here and there.
So if you get manufacturers, distributors that get out of the opioid business altogether, does that not drive up the price because now the market is not there? So it becomes less appealing to use opioids for pain management or whatever they were being used for.
I think now we're outside of my area of expertise.
How long have you been doing this?
So I was with the office before, but I've been working on this case since 2019. We filed our lawsuit.
Litigation's been going on since like 16.
Yeah, the lawsuit was filed, I believe, at the very beginning of 2018 by then Attorney General Den. I came in with A.G. Jennings. So.
To piggyback off of Commissioner Sweeney, I was thinking along the same lines about the people that don't get educated on how to use or not use drugs, whether it be opioid or whatever. Is there money going to be set aside for education portions to help people?
So I can't say what's going to be set aside, but that is an absolute permissible use, and that is something that the commission can deliberate on. The local government committee can make recommendations to the commission in accordance with the way the sort of hierarchical structure is set up. But that is absolutely a permissible use. I've heard a lot about outreach and education as something that people do want to do.
And by statute, Kent County has a designated representative on the distribution commission itself, but also serves on the local government subcommittee.
And just like Commissioner Sweeney was saying too, once it's going to elevate it because it's not going to be used, but then again, the black market's going to be a different area to deal with. So law enforcement, is there going to be training for law enforcement also for this too then?
So law enforcement, for purposes of either addressing the crisis or prevention, yes. Yeah. I'm happy I can share with you a copy of that Exhibit E, which really lays out the different types of uses, if you're interested.
Okay. Commissioner Sweeney.
So I'm just going through the rest of your presentation before we get to it. I apologize. You don't go over how we'll be able to use the opioid settlement when it comes. That's coming at a later point.
So, Jamie, you actually, I think, may be more up to date on where the commission is in terms of the first round of grant applications.
Yeah.
I bring the money in.
Yes, so under the roads map agreement, which is the state and subdivision partnership agreement that is in effect here in Delaware, all of the money that is coming into the state, both the state's share, the abatement fund, so under the settlement agreements, there's a 70-15-15 default, and it's 70% abatement, 15% to the municipalities and subdivisions, 15% to the state, which could be used for anything. What the subdivisions and the state agreed to here was, let's make sure it all goes to abatement. And so the state is contributing their money, all 70%, really the 85%, and the municipalities and subdivisions, counties are contributing their 15% into a 100% abatement pot. Also in that, going into that same pot of money is there's a slight charge on the sales of opioids in Delaware now. That is, it's called an opioid impact fee assessment for sales that the legislature adopted. That money's in the settlement, as well as the McKinsey settlement that Owen referenced, and all of that is available for abatement. And it's distributed by the Prescription Opioid Distribution Commission, of which the county serves, has a representative. There's 15 people on that commission. The initial round of grant applications went out, and they received a number. They're going to award 30 grants of $100,000 or up to $100,000 each, and that's the initial tranche of $3 million that's going to go out. But as you see, when Owen went back through the presentation, they want to make sure there's a stable amount of money in the fund, and they're getting some money out on the street right away. But the grant applications were from a host of organizations, whether it's those in the opioid treatment space or recovery space, as well as municipal governments and police departments. And that first tranche is going to be awarded, but then they're going to be awarding more grants. And just give a plug for the League of Local Governments. The Attorney General and who serves as the co-chair with the Lieutenant Governor are going to give a presentation at the next League of Local Governments meeting on the process and the fund and the grant process and the application process. So if anyone has an opportunity to attend that. Thanks.
And I have another question on page 4. You're talking about the potential maximum of $80 million coming to Delaware. But on page 3, under the projections for existing settlements, $102 million.
Oh,
Then
perfect.
showing 92 million up there. What's the difference in all the
Okay.
difference in
So-
pricing?
Here, going back to the distributors in Johnson & Johnson, that amount, the 77 million plus the 17.5, I believe is your 92. Some of the additional, there's additional money, the McKinsey Mallinckrodt, so it's sort of, that gets you to that roughly 100 million number. I forget exactly the math. The $80 million here is in addition to that. And so this brings me to my next slide, actually, where I'm going to sum it all up for you. I'm going to flip to that now. So we were just on this slide. The next slide, this is all of the settlements, both past, current, and the bankruptcies that we are expecting, all together. And so here, I honestly don't know why the number on the first slide for distributors was in the 70 millions, because here we have it at 90 million, which I believe is accurate. And so when you look at the distributors, 90 million, plus the Johnson & Johnson, 20 million, that first round was about 110 million to the state. We are today looking at the pharmacies plus Teva and Allergan. Those add up to the additional 80. When you add in the Purdue bankruptcy money of about, what am I putting the Purdue? It's in 2 lines here, 22. It's about 46 million. And then some of the other smaller settlements. We're looking over time at, just shy of $250 million coming to Delaware. So it's
Just Delaware.
That's just Delaware. Just Delaware.
And I think the Attorney General or some of us would say that's not enough to meet the harm and to meet the need, but it is a substantial amount. And to your point, we really do hope it has a substantial impact. We were just talking that Delaware set another record just this past year. So the need is certainly there, and getting the money in and out into the community as fast as possible is a real consideration.
Is the roads map agreement online somewhere?
Yes. So
I have
to point you to the very next slide. You guys are leading me along here. So the bottom bullet on this slide, nationalopioidsettlement.com, that's actually the easiest place to go for any of the documents. There you can pull up the settlement agreements, but there's also a Delaware-specific page on nationalopioidsettlement.com where you can find the roads map agreement, and you can also find Senate Bill 166. So that's the easiest place to find those documents. So this is my last slide, I believe. No, there's 2 slides here. But it's my last topic, which is the sign-on process. The same 10 subdivisions need to join these settlements as with the ones a year and a half ago. In order, the roads map agreement requires, in order to remain in your role participating on the commission and the local government subcommittee, to participate in these new settlements. The timeline for the sign-on, we've gone through all the state pieces, and really is we're right now in the thick of the subdivision sign-on process nationwide. So right, there are thousands and thousands of subdivisions in the same position you are in evaluating this. The deadline is April 18th. I really hope that we get to do this much sooner than that, so we're not doing a last-minute scramble. I'm available for questions today and any day hereafter in the hopes that we can wrap up Delaware's participation quickly. And I will be following up with all the 9 other subdivisions by the end of this month as well, to make sure that we all know what Delaware can expect here. So again, nationalopioidsettlement.com is the best place for documents. And then this is really details for your lawyers, but the process is done through DocuSign. There's a affirmation, so there's 5 settlement participation forms, and there's just an affirmation of the roads map agreement. And then most important, perhaps, is my last slide, which is my email address. Please don't hesitate. I'll take any further questions you have tonight, but I remain available by email anytime to you.
President?
There were some pretty big hitters up there that didn't sign on, haven't signed on yet, like Newcastle County. Do you have any idea why they didn't initially join the?
So, again, let me distinguish. If the question is why they haven't signed on to the settlements, we're just, the emails for the settlement sign-on just went out within the past couple of weeks. I think that there's only one other subdivision that has actually completed their sign-on process. There's still, nearly 2 months left. I fully anticipate everybody will sign on, and it's just, different cities and counties have different levels of bureaucracy that they need to go through. So was that your question? Okay.
Any further questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. for
Absolutely,
enlightening,
my pleasure.
Appreciate it. Being educated.
My pleasure. Thank you for your
Makes a
time.
difference.
Yes, hope it does too.
And if I had an easier job, I can just give as counsel for these matters to the county. We did file suit against 4 of the defendants. We did not sue Walmart originally. We didn't see them as necessarily a significant retail pharmacy chain the way we did the same with CVS and Walgreens and Rite Aid. But by population, you are a primary subdivision. So for Delaware to get the maximum amount of money in that case, you need to join all 5 settlements, so to speak, and there's 5 separate ones to be considered. But it would be my recommendation that the county certainly join, as it has done with the other settlements, one for the benefit to Delaware as a whole, and also under the roads map agreement. As Owen mentioned, it's the way to stay a member of the committee and to participate in how and advocate for the residents of Kent County on how the funding should be allocated is to be part of the commission. And there's no direct allocation to any entity other than the abatement fund here. So the state's kicking in all their money, and all the subdivisions are doing the same. Yes, sir.
So is abatement mainly education?
Abatement means all of the things that go into remediating the opioid crisis. So it's the education, the treatment, the public safety components, all of the eligible uses under the settlement agreement that Owen generally fall under that larger term abatement. Yeah.
Would that also include EMS for the Narcan?
Yes.
Yes, yeah. So, but one important point is the Senate Bill 166 restricts spending to future, to sort of new spending. So it's not meant to supplant existing city, county, or state spending on whether it's EMS or anything else. But if there's new spending, that would be eligible.
Was naloxone was Narcan?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the components of the Teva settlement too is the contribution of Narcan product itself at a discounted rate. And I don't know if you want to talk about at some point the commission will have to decide whether or not to take a payment as opposed to the contribution of the Narcan itself. But one of the settlement components is the contributing the Narcan itself.
Was Teva the only manufacturer of Narcan?
No, it's a generic manufacturer of Narcan and naloxone, but it's the only one that's contributing to the settlement. So there are other manufacturers from whom the state, counties, others can purchase on the open market, and so that's part of the decision. The commission will have an opportunity every 2 years to revisit its decision as to whether the price they're getting from Teva is better or worse than they would be getting on the open market, given the alternative cash payment that they could opt for in the alternative.
And then you can force Teva out of the Narcan commitment into a cash commitment.
Correct, yeah. You get to choose.
Wow.
The committee's already been set, correct?
Which committee?
The one, I guess the one you're going to be meeting with to determine where the money's going to be going.
So as Jamie was saying, the commission it's 15 members. It's chaired by the Attorney General and the Lieutenant Governor. There are legislators, other members of the executive on it, stakeholders, and then there are 4 local government representatives on the commission itself, one representative from each county, as well as a representative recommended by the League of Local Governments to represent the municipalities. And then in addition that's at the commission level. There's also the local government committee. That local government committee has each of the 10 subdivisions that we've talked about tonight are members of that local government committee. So Kent sits on both the commission and that local government committee. That local government committee isn't set. It's currently set. The chairs could always choose to expand it or what have you.
Communication is flowing from the bottom up then, too.
Yeah.
It's a two-way street.
From the communities, and under the statute, if the commission doesn't accept the recommendations of the local government subcommittee, they have to give written reasons why. It's just not no, we're going to do something else. So the idea was to build in as much local participation from the affected communities as possible.
So our appointee is Chief Faulkner. Will it be his responsibility to come back and report to us on a regular basis after the meeting, after the roadmap committee meets? Or will you come back?
The participation from I would assume that
Any
your designee
decisions
is
that are
going to be.
made, would he be bringing those decisions back to us in some type of regular update?
Well, certainly if you direct him to do so as your designee, but if any time you have questions, I'm certainly happy to answer those.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any further questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Polytech Aviation Maintenance. Sam. Welcome.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
Nice to be here. So thank you very much for allowing us to come and speak to you again. It's been several months since we first came, and I had the privilege of addressing this group, and we're really glad to come and give this update tonight. With me this evening is Nick Johnson, the Director of Operations for Polytech. I'm Jeremy McIntyre with the Adult Division, and happy to talk to you about the aviation program. So I'm going to go ahead and advance the slide, and we'll get started.
So as Jeremy said, Nick Johnson, Director of Operations at Polytech. I oversee most of the non-instructional components of our district. Thank you for letting us present tonight. Thanks for your investment in our program early on. Since we signed that lease with you all in August, we immediately got to work as a district. As you can see from the pictures before you, the building needed significant repair. So on the interior, we really repaired and renovated everything from the floor to the ceiling and anything in between. Exterior, we fixed the roofs, fixed all the broken windows, parking lots, really invested in the exterior because we wanted to be a representation of the School of Aviation Maintenance long-term. Most importantly, though, we purchased state-of-the-art tools, supplies, materials, and infrastructure this program requires to be successful. So things like badge access control, security cameras, Wi-Fi connectivity, an operable phone system that actually piggybacks off of our system at the main campus in Woodside. And overall, right now, we've invested just under $500,000 as a district. And I can confidently stand before you today and say we are committed to this program's long-term success and viability at Polytech. And as Jeremy will allude to, so are industry partners and our congressional delegates.
So this slide is a representation of the partnerships that really have come together and helped us with this program. They really have been tremendous, and it has been a group effort from the beginning. First of all, we do want to, as Nick mentioned a moment ago, just thank you guys for the helping us get started with a place to meet there. Without that, we had the vision, but we couldn't share it with anybody. Nobody could see it because there was no place to actually put it. I mean, Linda Parkowski will tell you and some others that for a long time we would talk to people about this and they'd say, oh, where's your program? And I'd say, well, we don't have one yet. But once we got that, the ball just started rolling. We met with Delaware River and Bay Authority and talked to them about the vision and said, we've got this great building. And they said, oh, do you have a jet yet? And I kind of laughed. I said, well, if you have one to give me. And they said, no, but we think DSU might. So they connected us to Delaware State University and their aviation program. And they had that jet that you see there, which is now parked behind our building. It's a fully operable jet that still we run the engines and we can run the landing gear through and all the flight controls and everything that allows us to really teach what we need to teach there at the school.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So my question is, which one of you is taking responsibility for scratching it?
Oh, it's already been scratched.
I know.
So
We're
we're
there for your opening. And
yeah,
you guys said it was
we're in the
scratched.
process of fixing it, actually. See, it's a good thing we have a school of aviation maintenance. Yeah. So we actually know how to fix them. So we've got the parts on order and we're getting that repaired. So hopefully next time you see it, that'll be fixed. But it really was, I mean, even the process of moving it. So getting the base to agree to allow us to fly it there and land it there. Getting the Delaware River and Bay Authority to let us keep it there until we got First Aid Crane to come and help us lift it and move it. We had to lift it over 2 different fences. Then getting DelDOT to come and actually remove all the shrubs and actually cut down a couple of small trees on the side so the wings would fit through. And then DelDOT's actually lifting the signs out of the ground, the stop signs and other signs out of the ground as we're pushing by so that way the wings could fit. And then putting the signs back in behind us and pounding them back into the ground. And then they actually got there and with Nick and myself and a bunch of others who are the instructors, pushed that thing physically with our hands, pushed it and got it to the building. It was incredible, but it represents kind of that teamwork that it really took to bring it all together. I'm going to talk a little bit about some things going forward, but I'd be remiss if I didn't mention our partners at Dover Air Force Base. So just tremendous partners in so many different ways, including supporting this move, but also in providing instructors and also helping us with sending students. So I'll talk about that in a second. So what you see here represents kind of where we have come so far. First of all, on the bottom right corner there, those of you who were at the open house know it was a great day. We had over 100 people there that day. And it gave us a chance to kind of showcase right before we started our new program. And it was fantastic. We did the ribbon cutting, but you can see in the picture there, those 2 aircraft, they were actually donated by a local Kent County person who just passed away, Mr. David Doyle. And he was a Korean War vet and just a great guy. And we loved having him a part of the program. And he really left a legacy there by giving us those aircraft, which we were proud to have now. And we can actually run the engines, allows us to have more actual functioning equipment, which is great. So above that, on the top right, you see our first class there. They met and have actually finished. We are running different types of courses and programs. That one happens to be a certification prep program. And so that certification prep program is really an intensive 2-week full-time, actually goes to about 3 weeks technically, but 2 to 3 week full-time program where people who are already approved by the FAA to test get the help they need to get ready and to pass what's probably the most difficult exam any of them will ever take in their life. I mean, it's extremely hard. I'm thrilled to say that out of the 10 who started, 9 of them actually, which is a tremendous accomplishment, 90%, 9 of them passed all 3 of their written FAA exams. And there are different levels with passing the hands-on part. But so far, so good. It's going really well. There's some of our, actually the guy in the far left there is the gentleman who's our lead instructor. He's on the right, standing up with the gray shirt on, teaching the other 2 students. And we had great, it was a great class. The lady speaking actually in the top right is Congresswoman Blunt Rochester. She came to visit our first class and wanted to just say hi and express the support of the delegation for what we're doing in the program. So it was really nice having her there. And then in the middle there, it represents our 3 levels. So the first one is what I mentioned, that certification prep. The next one there, level 2, represents our 12-week full-time program that will be kicked off this summer. And that's really for people who have no previous aviation experience. And that's a really great thing because that's going to let us get people to work locally. So people who want to take it, who have no prior experience, that's a great way to do it. And then the final level that we'll be offering starting in the fall is our apprenticeship, registered apprenticeship, where basically people who are working in the industry at the entry level will come back to us from Delaware and around the whole surrounding region to take this. I should mention really quick, this is a regional program, and we're going to get a lot of people from out of state coming here locally to take this. Right now, we're looking at probably in the first year or 2, probably about 75 to 100 people per year will be going through the school. That may increase over time, but right now that's a reasonable expectation of what we'll see, the number of people that we'll touch per year. This is just basically a picture there again on the bottom left of the Congresswoman's visit and our superintendent and some other folks there, Dr. Jones, who is our director of our adult program, and John Morris, who's the lead for the program there on my right there in the picture. And those are our first grads. I said 9 of them finished and got their certs, but there was the first group there that actually had got them, and super proud, very proud of them. This is the final slide, and I want to just take a few minutes and talk about where we're going next. And that's really what I wanted to share with you, and kind of probably the most important piece of what I want to talk about. So if you just look at the different names on there, each one of them represents a different piece of kind of where this is going. We just had a great meeting with Boeing. They're inviting us to apply for a grant. They're looking at supporting us as a corporate sponsor for the program. And the reason why Boeing is looking at doing that, and they are really interested in like scholarships, that sort of thing. The reason why they're very interested in doing that is because they see it as an important key to really addressing the real serious problem in the aviation industry. If you're not familiar with it right now, there's a massive national problem with both pilots and also with aviation maintenance. Huge problem. The population was older to begin with, and COVID just drove them all out. They just left in huge numbers. And then what happened was all of the regional employers, like we have here in Delaware, lost all their people because they went to the big carriers to go work. and make a lot more money. And so they just gutted all the local employers, so much so that a lot of them have actually grounded operations, and they've grinded to a halt. They're working at limited capacity because of the lack of people. And so Boeing sees this, and they've been struggling to find the people for their plant there in Philadelphia. So they see this as a long-term partnership between them and the school, where it'll be a recruitment source for them. They actually plan to send apprentices back to our program. So we'll continue to help them with developing their people and participate through internship and some other things. So we're thrilled for that. Underneath Boeing, I have Joint Team Andrews there. It's interesting, on the first slide you saw, I had Dover Air Force Base. We have so far 30 enrollments throughout this spring. 10 of them we've already had, 20 more that are scheduled. Probably about 25 of those 30 are from the base. We have great relationships with the base, but I put Andrews there because it represents new and developing relationships that we have going forward. Andrews has reached out to me. I've had a really good contact with them and talking with their folks about how we can help their transitioning airmen gain the skills that they need to be able to stay local to their area and fill important jobs. And so they're going to use us as a program that will help not just Dover, but Andrews. And then I know there'll be similar interest. We haven't reached out to them yet, but from McGuire in Jersey and several other. There's actually 19 different military installations within a about 200-mile radius of Dover. There's nothing else like what we offer anywhere, even close. So that's a huge thing. Tennessee is the closest program that kind of looks something like what we have. There's really nothing here in the Northeast Corridor. Piedmont Airlines, they're in Salisbury and Philadelphia. Piedmont wants to donate to us. They're going to. They've already slotted to give us a brand new engine that we'll be able to use for our program, and they want to work with us. I have a Velo up there. We went to their initial ribbon cutting open house and in talks with their folks about how we can help supply their maintenance needs. And again, because of the model that we have, it's not the traditional college model where people, and this is important for everybody to understand, people go through 2 years and longer at a college basically before they are able to work in the field. With us, 12 weeks. We'll get them out, they start working, they come back to us as apprentices while they're working. So it allows them to get right into the workforce and allows us to pump out a lot of people every year. On top of that, we're helping those folks who don't have the credentials, who are in the military, get those important civilian credentials so they can go out and help the local workforce. Wilmington University and Delaware State University, we are already talking with WilmU, and I've had some conversations with DSU. They're early about how they can recognize and award college credit and align to their degree programs for the students who go through our program. So should somebody want to go through and earn a degree after they're done, that opportunity will be available to them. We've got a great program like that already with WilmU, with our construction program. They're about to do a formal announcement and tell everybody, but they're looking at almost 2 years worth of basically college credit being awarded for somebody going through one of our construction programs. I see this as being exactly the same. They'll have half of their bachelor's degree done by the time they're done with our program, so that way they can basically just do 2 more years and be done. I approached WilmU with a model, they liked it. That was what I went through in the Air Force. That's how I got my initial associate's degree, was through my Air Force experience. And then went to WilmU and finished up, I actually went to Embry-Riddle, finished up my 4-year degree in WilmU for my master's. But it all started because I got the first 2 years basically recognized for my technical training that I did in the military. And so we're looking at applying that same model to this. So WilmU and DSU, registered apprenticeship, as I said, is the structure we're using. That's the backbone of all we do. And that leaves me with the county and what you have done with the building there. It is absolutely essential. When Boeing came and visited us, I can tell you that the thing that Boeing said is, look, we believe in this, we want to invest, we need to know that you guys are going to be there for a while. We need to know that this is stable, secure, that you're not going to be moving in the near future. And that is, I would like to continue the conversation about how we can make sure this is a long-term sustainable arrangement where we basically have some security. I think it's a huge benefit to the county, to the local community, and again, thank you so much for what you've done. But that's a, you know, an essential thing is that building, and the location could not be better. It couldn't.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, Commissioner.
So, one question on a serious note. Will your students be able to work on aircraft at the Air Mobility Museum?
Yeah, actually, one of the gentlemen who I've hired is actually one of the volunteers out there. He's got a lot of experience, more than he probably would like me sharing, but in the industry, and he's working at the museum. Well, he volunteers there. The gentleman, David Doyle, who donated those 2 aircraft I mentioned, was a long-term museum, AMCB museum volunteer. And we plan as an and the museum has actually donated some stuff to us already. I probably could have certainly included them on that slide before of all the people who've had a piece. There's been so many. But we plan to continue that relationship with the AMC Museum for sure.
On a less serious note, can you get Boeing to donate a 737-300 and put the Kent County logo on it?
You know, you joke, but when I met with the person who's in charge of their giving, she came down to talk to me about applying for a scholarship, and I said, I'd like to get an aircraft from you. And she said, she looked at the building, looked at the space. I was like, well, you make helicopters, right? They said, we do. I said, you make a small one, I'm aware of it. I said, I think I could fit it nicely right in my shop floor. I said, I'd really like to get that helicopter.
I want to be
And
there.
and I told Nick at the time, I said, she didn't laugh at me. She kind of looked at me, she said, well, we'll see. She said, we'll see. I said, you guys, you know, you have, one thing you have is aircraft. And we could use that. And I also talked to them as well about, I said, I'd love to go to your scrapyard and go through and pick through. And yeah, absolutely. I'd love to get a flight deck from them. I'd like to get, you know, there's so many things, engines, you know. If they'd let me go there, it's like a kid in the candy store.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So
I just
she
wanna
said
be
she's
there when
working on
you
it.
lift that Boeing over top of the 2 fences. And
We're going to need a bigger yard if that's the case. Yeah.
That, I was going to ask you, if you're going to branch out to helicopters.
We are, yeah, so we're working with Summit Aviation right now in Middletown, and they do helicopter maintenance, as you may know. We are absolutely interested. Right now, everything we're doing is basically based on soliciting donations. And so we're trying to talk to, you know, different state agencies about, hey, you've got, you know, an aircraft that you haven't used for some time. We'd love to have one of those. We've talked to Summit and said, you know, we'd love to have one of your helicopters. And they said, we'll see. The same thing Boeing said. So we would love to have, but we are able to teach the maintenance required to work on helicopters. And I think we have a person coming up in either this class or the next one coming who's from Summit. So they're going to be using the school. But boy, would I love to have an airframe that we could actually use to show that. That would be fantastic. So we are working on that.
so when you have students come in for the 12-week program, you said right now they're more regional. When they start coming in from farther away, where do they stay? Do they live
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm guessing local hotels. So the way we designed the program is, so first of all, these 2-week certification preps. We're going to see people from all up and down the Northeast Corridor coming for this. In fact, it's interesting, so I just found out about a conference in Newark this weekend called PAMA. It's an aviation maintenance conference. Didn't know about it, but it's a big deal. Hundreds of employers, several hundred people coming to this, and they actually gave us for free time to speak to the group because they recognize the interest, the regional interest, and those employers are going to want to know. So we're going to see people coming in. The apprenticeship program is designed differently. All of our other registered apprenticeship programs meet like 2 nights a week, and we have it over the course of 9 months. This one, I'm doing 2 2-week blocks a year, so that if you are an aviation company in Ohio, you can send your folks to our school here, and they can come for 2 weeks, stay at a local hotel, and go back. So the idea is they'll be staying at local hotels, and then returning after that. So we don't provide any kind of accommodations, obviously.
Nick?
I think the economic impact that we're helping to provide gives a lot of bang for its buck too, with the
Yeah.
local hotels.
Yeah. So.
Any other questions?
They make those trailers like, used to having the eastern
Finish
side of the
upstairs,
school.
maybe we'll put a sleeping bunk up there.
Some
Some
cots.
barracks.
Just a nice nice Boeing 737 with compartments people sleep in.
Some Airbuses.
That would be a unique hotel opportunity.
Very nice.
Proud to have you there.
Thank you.
Thank you for the update, and hope that we can have you come back and you have some new, more educational endeavors that you can share with us.
Thank you.
I think Levy Court, hopefully, I'm sure we're all willing to help do something.
The contract is a lease at this point, right?
It's a 2-year lease, which would expire at the end of next year.
So you're looking for something more long-term,
We are,
and that benefits you with partners.
Yeah, absolutely. We would like something more stable and long-term, for sure. We, as Nick mentioned, we've invested already a lot of money into the building, and if you go see it, and some of you have been there and you've seen it, I think you can see the investment. But in addition to that, there's other things that we would love to do. The back of the building, for example, I'd love to put a hangar door there. Right now, we've got, not complaining, we're over the moon about having the facility. But if you've noticed the little aircraft I have in there, we had to chop its wings off so that we could squeeze it in and out. And it, believe me, I have to actually push the wings up, and we have like guys on either side holding them. We push it through the door, and then the wings drop back down. And that's okay. We're thankful to be there. But if we had some kind of a different relationship, I think we would probably put a hangar door there so we could actually have a way to bring aircraft in and out. There's other things as well, but we're, again, very thankful, thrilled. But yeah, that is, I think, when these investors are looking, they're saying basically, this is important, and I don't disagree. I think it is important. So
I would introduce you to the Friends episode, Pivot, to get your planes in and out.
yeah, absolutely.
Nice.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, absolutely.
Any public comments on these 2 items we've heard so far tonight? Any public comments? Seeing none, back to you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is Community Services Committee. Commissioner Sweeney, Chair. I'll turn it over to you, sir. You have one item.
Yep, thank you, Mr. President. We have a presentation and a request from Reloud Delaware. Joining us is Councilman Joe Roca from City of Dover. Is also the Director of Philanthropy and Engagement for United Way. He's got a great program going, and hope we can help him out.
Thank you, Mr. President, Mr. Vice President, Commissioners, and Chair. The reason why I'm here, I know it says Read Aloud Delaware. Initially, when I talked with Commissioner Sweeney about this, we were kicking off our program with World Read Aloud Day. So there's 2 initiatives that we use to springboard into our reading program called My Very Own Library. So I just wanted to bring My Very Own Library to your attention if you hadn't heard about it, and share a little bit about what the program is for and what it's all about and how it encourages reading and hopefully builds literacy among our early 1st, 2nd, 3rd graders so that we can get them to read on grade level by the time they get to 4th grade. So I'll be sharing there. Wrong one. Here we go. And there's a few of our kids that are excited about getting their books, and they get like a backpack to go with their books, and in the background you see the selection of books that they're that's the setup for My Very Own Library. So My Very Own Library is a literacy initiative that helps students build their own libraries for fostering their love for reading. So they get to select books that they could take home and build their libraries at home. And they start out in first grade, and then each year they accumulate books, and it doesn't cost them any money. They pick a certain amount of books for free. I'll get into a little bit of that as well. So a little bit about why this work is important. For example, in middle-income neighborhoods, the ratio of books per child is 13-1. In low-income neighborhoods, that ratio is 1 age-appropriated book for every 300 children. 50% of the children from low-income communities start first grade up to 2 years behind their peers, and 2 out of every 3 students who cannot read proficiently by the end of 4th grade will end up in jail or on welfare. And over 70% of America's inmates cannot read above 4th grade level. Now, this program is not income-based program. When we bring these books and we offer, the opportunity for these kids to pick out books, it doesn't matter what household they come from, right? So from an equity standpoint, everyone has the same shot at getting to build their library, take their libraries at home, and being in the school setting, being able to inspire them to read. And the reason why it's personal for me, I do have an education background where I've worked in the school system at Capitol, and I've also worked in after-school programming in Chester, Pennsylvania, and I've worked with students from 7th grade on into 12th. And I did encounter students who couldn't read at those grade levels. The problem that I saw was the students, even though I tried to bring in reading programs to help catch them up, they were embarrassed and didn't want to participate because they didn't want anybody to know that they couldn't read on grade level. So with this program, what inspires me the most is usually the younger kids in kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade, they don't worry about peer pressures and all that kind of stuff, and we can instill reading into them right then and there, so that when they're proficient by 4th grade, we're pretty much guaranteeing that they're going to graduate from high school, and pretty much giving them the option to seek a higher level of education. So that's why it's personal to me. And right now, currently in Delaware, a lot of these statistics are national, and we don't want to point fingers at any particular school district or anything like that. But to just give you a snapshot, it's around 10% of the students in our state that are actually reading on grade level. And I think, we should be able to improve that if we all collectively come together. So 80% of preschool and after-school programs serving low-income populations have no age-appropriate books for their children. And children from low-income homes have limited access to books. And because of this, there are fewer home and preschool language and literacy opportunities for preschoolers from low-income families than children from economically advantaged backgrounds. So that's why, this becomes important, and it should be important to everybody to help in any way we can. Okay, so I went through a couple of those. I'm reading my slides and I'm not keeping up over here. Okay, and there's another picture of My Very Own Library to give you an idea, how excited these kids are to have this opportunity. So let's look at the research. The research says large book collections at home equal a more powerful impact on reading frequency than household income. So basically, regardless of household income, if children have access to books, they're going to read on grade level and essentially project them to coming out of poverty when they become adults. Parents reading at home is also equal to more powerful impact than household income. And 10 to 20 books provided at the end of each school year equals reading gains for 50% of the students, reversing the low trend of low-income students losing ground over the summer. If they're just stuck at home or whatever, they have books or a library at home that they can use as a resource. So a 2010 meta-analysis found that access to print materials through book ownership programs like My Very Own Library have statistically significant impact on emergent literacy skills, reading performance, writing performance, attitude towards reading, motivation to read, reading behavior, basic language abilities, general academic performance, which includes mathematics, which on another level, this is one of the reasons why our math scores are so low as well, because of the reading deficiency. So the strategy is increasing students' motivation to read through engaging motivational event activities. And that's what World Read Aloud Day is, a reading activity, and the upcoming Read Across America Day that we promote. Also, enhancing literacy skills and habits through access to print materials, and increasing parent and community engagement to build students' language arts literacy. And the goal for this is to increase student literacy outcomes. So we try to, get in as many schools as we can. Not all of them are on board, but we're working on it. But, once we're in those schools, provide these opportunities for books, try to engage parents and be a part of the community events in the schools themselves, and try to, go in with volunteers to read to classrooms and even one-on-one opportunities to read to students, just to get them motivating and wanting to read on their own. And we want to do this as early as possible. So, as far as book ownership, why do kids need books? I'll just go over a few of these. Books create warm, emotional bonds between adults and kids when they read books together. So we want to encourage, even in preschool level, to develop an excitement for reading. So we want our parents to engage their children. We want to teach the parents to engage their children and use that opportunity to bond while reading books. Books help kids to develop basic language skills and profoundly expand their vocabularies. Many of us we pretty much know that. Books are interactive. They demand that kids think. Fiction and nonfiction books widen our consciousness, and books develop critical reading skills, and so on and so on. Keep going. So our goals for MVOL, we have 20 schools that are participating throughout the state. We have two book fair events at each school. They get to select 10 books, and it's free. They get a free tote bag, bookmarkers, things of that nature. And we do family engagement or literacy events in each school. We have at least one author visit. So when we did World Read Aloud Day, that was when we found local authors who have their own children's books that they wrote come in to we selected schools that they came into and read to the students. And then the authors gave each student a book, and then they left copies of the book so that it could be there in the library. So that was the goal for that. So the authors visit, we already did that. Now we did front the money to pay for the books so the authors, we bought the books from the author so that the author could distribute them to the kids, so the kids wouldn't be, or the students wouldn't have to pay for the books. And our goal is also My Very Own Library support. which is why I'm here, is scholastic support. And here's happy kids picking out their books during the My Very Own Library program. Oops. Here we go. So what happens is, in order to empower the students and encourage book ownership, students are encouraged to choose, their own books from a free My Very Own Library, which is a scholastic book fair, is how we remembered it probably when we were in school. So in book fair number 1, which happens in the winter, they choose 5 books, and then in the summer break, before summer break actually, they get the opportunity to do that again. So if they start out in the first grade, they get 10 books, then the next year they get 10 books, and then third grade they get 10 books, all the way up to 4th grade. The most successful way to improve the reading achievement of low-income children is to increase their access to print. Communities ranking high in achievement tests have several factors in common: an abundance of books in public libraries, easy access to books, and in the community at large, and a large number of textbooks per student. And, the resource for this is Newman in the year 2000. A critical component of My Very Own Library literacy initiative is engaging parents and the community in the development of students' literacy skills and working with them to support healthy reading habits in the home. Participating schools receive mini grants to host up to 2 family literacy events during the school year. Research demonstrates that increasing parent involvement in students' education has tremendous impacts, particularly in literacy instruction. In fact, parent involvement in their child's literacy activities is more powerful than a host of variables often cited as reasons for poor student performance, including family size, parental education level, and socioeconomic status. So basically, regardless of their economic status, what's going on at home, what their family size is, if you provide encouragement for the students to read and the students grab onto that, they can pretty much, those in low-income households can pretty much pull themselves up by their bootstraps and make a better way for themselves when they become adults. So I don't know if you're familiar with this gentleman. His name is Dr. Julius Merlin. He was one of the authors who went into W. Riley Brown at World Read Aloud Day, which was February 1st, and he read his book in the library to a group of, I believe they were 2nd grade students, and he handed his book out to all the students that he read to. Now, the wonderful thing that I would like to show you here is that one of our My Very Own Library schools right here in Kent County is Fairview Elementary School. And they actually participated, their students actually participated in a competition. Last year when they participated, there's a NFL player, his name is Malcolm Mitchell, who designed a program called the Read Bowl. And he challenges students across the world globally to read in the most hours per team gets collected, and the winners are announced on Super Bowl Sunday. That's why they call it the Read Bowl. So obviously the Super Bowl is over, right? Well, last year Fairview participated in it, and I think they won the Delaware. For the state, they represented Delaware as the winner in the Read Bowl nationwide. This year, they participated again. They won nationally. So they do have a global, I think a team in Georgia, I believe, won the global championship. But Fairview Elementary School won the national championship for the Read Bowl. And there's going to be recognition coming out on that. And, I know myself and the mayor, several council members are going to go to the school and give them their recognition. I will keep you all up to date on when that is. And if you can make it over there, that would be great. Because these kids, I applaud these children, they are really, Fairview is really taking charge, and the Principal White over there is encouraging their kids. And these are all the faculty that we took a picture with, myself and John Moore, you might see back there. And, we were just thrilled to be able to go over there and congratulate the faculty just for encouraging their students to do this. And I don't know the number of hours, but it was a multitude of hours of reading collectively that they were able to do to win that achievement. And I think they're going to either virtually or in person meet Malcolm Mitchell, who is a former NFL football player. He's either going to make it out here, or if he can't, on the date that we select to give them their recognition, he will show up virtually for the students and congratulate them. So it was a huge thing. But Fairview is my very own library school, and the director for the program connected them to the Read Bowl, and they bought in. And the newest school right now that we have, W. Riley Brown in CR School District, is part of is one of the 20 schools, and Town Point. They'll be ready to participate in the Read Bowl next year. So it's going to generate, an enthusiasm, probably statewide. They're going to challenge themselves to go after a championship like that, like Fairview. Fairview is setting the bar, and they're going to try to, fight to meet that challenge. And I'm excited from this point on what this achievement is going to do for our state going forward. So again, they represent Delaware as well, but they're also national champions. So if I can, so Mark, this is just a video that we put together.
It was an amazing experience getting books, and I also had a really hard time getting books I wanted. You can read the back for some information about the book, to learn more about the book. It was amazing, and I did get amazing books I wanted.
Reading is the key to everything. I tell them that if you read, the world is yours. Reading is going to give them the foundation to become adults that love to read. And that's going to affect their family life, their job, and everything in the future.
Developing a lifelong passion and love for reading is just integral to what we stand for as an educational organization, as a school district, but more importantly, it's freeing. It opens our minds to possibilities, to fulfill our dreams, to live out our goals and aspirations. Helps us discover new opportunities, new cultures, but also understanding a greater sense of who we are.
My name is Ariana C, and I'm in 5th grade. And it was fun getting my books because there is a big selection of books in here, and the books that I got are really good.
And the one thing, and if you ever want to visit, or you want to see what this looks like, or you want to take an opportunity and read, or be in a classroom where the students are reading themselves from books they pick in this library.
The books that there is.
The books are, see how it says 3, 4, and 5 in the background? It gives them what the grade levels are for the book.
You can read the back.
And what I was walking around doing was challenging students to go up a level. Now, don't just read first grade books, try to pick out a book that, is a little more challenging, and challenge yourself to read a grade level up. And they're positioned to do that because they're already, as they accumulate these books, they're they're already reading these books, and you know, I think, you know, it's going to take a while to be able to collect the data from these kids because they're starting out right now, but we are tracking the data to see the levels of improvement going forward, you know, as we expand this initiative. Now, as far as our ask goes, you know, what was asked of me was $5,000 for the purchase of books, and the we want to create a video because we, you know, in order to reach as many students as we can, we want a video of different readers, and the lieutenant governor participates in this video. Dr. Mark Brainerd, he participates from Delaware Tech. He participates, and there's a number of other leaders that get involved in reading for the video that we put together, and then we send that video out to as many school districts as we can to distribute to their teachers in the classrooms and show videos of these leaders reading, you know, to spark enthusiasm for reading. So it costs money, you know, to put the video together, and obviously, you know, the monies that we get it goes towards books. It's not part of the real part of the program itself. It's just for the events that we go out and we try to, you know, help families. You know, in addition to, we still give books to any event that we participate in, and World Read Aloud Day and Read Across America Day, which we do. We go into the early child development centers on Read Across America Day, which is on Dr. Seuss's birthday. So a lot of times we read Dr. Seuss books, and sometimes someone dresses up as Dr. Seuss and goes in there too. You know, the kids get excited. But we're starting with preschoolers, you know, and it's a way for us to get in the schools and introduce the program and hand out books to those kids as well, those students as well. I thank you for the opportunity for listening.
So my question is, if we were to consider a grant to them, a donation or whatever, does that come out of policy 30?
I think it can, except for, obviously you just went through community service grants. I see Read Aloud did put in a request, but this is really United Way.
Yeah, this is, yeah.
I didn't see where an application.
I think we missed the date before Councilman had contacted me.
Because that would have been a great place, especially if the program is trying to continue for a while.
Is this something that would be, you do this, obviously it's not going to just be 1 year, it's not one
Yeah,
time
no,
thing,
it wouldn't, no.
So for this year, for right now, we could consider policy 30, but then make sure that in December, an application comes in for the.
I think it might be a little too small. 30, if it's eligible under the rule, I'd have to take a quick read on that. And, but, you know, the possibility is for them to go back to, or we could maybe take a look at it running it through the budget process.
Okay.
Instead. If depending on July 1st is too late.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the last part.
The date part, July 1st is when the new budget would start.
Okay.
So we would consider it, because we're in the middle of our budget
Year
for
already.
2024.
Right.
If we were to include that as a budget line item, it wouldn't be distributable until after July 1st
Okay.
in our new year, so.
Okay.
Is that amenable, is that okay?
Yeah, that would be great. That would be great. You know, and if there's anything you need for me to send to you as far as that goes, or what would you need from me?
So we will be in contact with you.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thanks, we appreciate it.
Yep. Good to see you too. I might have you bring your car out for St. Patrick's Day. For the
Probably
parade.
will. Probably will.
My dad left me. My dad passed away in October, but he did leave behind a Mustang. I think I told you about it too. Yeah. So it's done, almost done. I might bring it out for either that. If not, it'll be our 4th of July.
There you go. There you go. Take care.
Any public comment on this item? Any public comment on this item? I don't think there's anything we have to move forward. We just have to take it under consideration during the budget process. All right, back to you, Mr. President.
All right, thank you. Next item is Planning Services Committee. Mr. Maston is the chair. I'll turn it over to you, ma'am.
At this point, we're going to do the review of updates to ordinance LC 23-04, formerly LC 22-23 zoning ordinance, and I think we have Ms. Kiefer and Mr. Conley here.
Thank you.
Ms. Kiefer?
Thank you, Commissioners. As Commissioner Maston said, this is the newest version of the zoning ordinance, with changes made based on the workshop we had last month. So we just wanted to briefly go through some of those. In the document you have, they're all highlighted, so they're easier to find. With definitions, we cleaned up that section, added some that had been inadvertently left out. Those are, again, highlighted in the document. The suggestion had been made to include yard sales back in the code, so we did that. There had been a request to make sure that we very explicitly said that recreational vehicles could be used as emergency dwellings. And then there appeared to be an agreement that for portable storage units, the timeline would be 60 days, but could be extended by the department should there be need. There was a lot of discussion about animals.
There's my chickens.
I did reach out to Secretary Skuse to get his feedback and sent him the standards we'd put together. He voiced no objection. He said they were fine. So those remain. We did add language to make it very clear that while if you've got backyard chickens, you may not have a rooster. If you've got a farm, you most certainly may have roosters. And then we talked a lot about domestic animals. So the conclusion appeared to be keep the number at 4, but we took the standard out of the definitions section and put it in the general provisions. And what that means is if we've got a specific case, if there's something unusual, someone can apply to the Board of Adjustment to alter that number. So they've got a way to effectively appeal. We did, and the county attorney had confirmed at the workshop, the sections that we were deleting in their entirety, that was making the document look enormous, we could simply state they're deleted. We don't have to show all the red lines. So those are just taken out. And then the one new use, there's been a lot of discussion about what to do with motocross tracks. So staff put together some draft language. It's included in its entirety in your memo, so you can get it, and it's highlighted in the actual code, so you can look at it. But the standards are largely typical for conditional uses. A minimum lot size, fairly substantial setbacks, screening, both to screen the use and to provide a sound buffer. Also specifically calls out they've got to submit days of operation, hours of operation, and that Levy Court can alter that to account for potential impact on neighbors. No camping, that's a separate use. It would have to be processed separately. Any lighting downward directed so it doesn't negatively impact adjacent property owners. Although I would also offer that in the conditional use section of the zoning ordinance, it actually already has that standard for all conditional uses. Any lighting has to be downward directed and can't shine on neighbors. Also addresses noise dampening as it relates to the vehicles, calls for dust suppression measures, limits the detached signing. if these are going to be permitted as a conditional use in AC and AR zoning districts, you don't necessarily want the kind of signage you would see on a highway. So it limits that. And then calls out how parking would be managed. So those were just ideas staff is putting out there as potential conditions if this were to be allowed as a conditional use with site plan in the AC and AR zoning districts. So in large part, that's a decision point for Levy Court tonight.
President Pepper?
Question. By doing this, what possibility does that allow for the track in Felton that was being developed as a car track to open as a motocross track?
No, it wouldn't change because that's zoned BG. This is specific to AC and AR.
Yeah.
You're talking about silo?
Yeah.
Speedway?
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Scott?
Sarah, just to make sure that I'm 100% accurate and that I've explained this to the individuals that we're dealing with in reference to a racetrack on both sides of the fence here. Mm-hmm. Even if this were to be passed as it stands, mm-hmm. they are still going to need to come back and they're going to need to put in an application for that. At that point, we would set down ground rules that they would need to comply with.
Yes, they would have to comply with whatever conditions are included in the ordinance, and then the Planning Commission can recommend and Levy Court can enact additional conditions that are specific to that site.
Okay, and if they did not comply with those, at that point, Levy Court would be able to revoke the condition, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
The request was made to specifically call out athletic complexes. We did that. And to maintain, or we're suggesting maintaining a 5-foot setback for handicap ramps. One item of discussion from the workshop had to do with moving all of the area and bulk regulations in the zoning ordinance. As it stands now, area and bulk regulations are in various places within the zoning ordinance. And if you want to find something as simple as what is a setback, it is not unusual to have to look in at least 2 places, if not more. And if the goal of this project all along had been to simplify the ordinance and make it easier for normal people to use, it seemed warranted to sort of put all of those things in one place and reconcile them. So that is how the ordinance is maintained. I know there was some concern about touching 397.2, which is where the growth zone overlay standards were created in 2003. The language that actually creates the growth zone or calls it out specifically remains in that section. It's only the area and bulk regulations that are moving. And I know a concern had been raised that we are, if we change some of the area and bulk regulations, somehow existing property owners would be harmed. I would offer only that existing property owners benefit from the changes in the area and bulk regs as well. And it's not all that different from 2003 when the area and bulk regulations for the growth zone were created. Prior to that, everyone had one set of area and bulk regulations, then we changed them in 2003. They became beneficial for a lot of property owners and they are able to use them. It's not that different. It's not different at all. So that stays, at least in this draft. Those are the primary changes, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Questions, commissioners?
Looks good. Let's go.
Commissioner Hertz?
Good to go.
Scott?
Good to go.
Sweeney?
What's the process from here on?
If the levy court wants to move forward after this evening, it would have to be introduced again, because it's a new ordinance. It can get on public hearing schedules for April, which would mean by the end of April, if all goes according to plan, we would have a new zoning ordinance.
Let's go.
President Pepper?
Good.
Vice President Angel?
Yes, I know when we had the meeting, I brought up the FACA afterfly guy about having a complaint process put in so that if we get a complaint that something happens, was that added to this at all?
I don't know that I heard consensus that anybody wanted to change to the enforcement process right now. As with any case, if a complaint comes in, we send enforcement. And for that particular event, or anything similar we know about ahead of time, we keep somebody on call.
I don't remember having consensus on motocross either.
No, but there's been considerable conversations with motocross because a gentleman, I believe, was from Snake Creek.
No.
Has been here, Snake River.
Matt Feint is here tonight. He's one of the neighbors. And
Right.
we actually have a timeline set up that myself and another commissioner, as well as Sarah, with Mr. Feint and Vinny that owns Snake Creek, are all going to sit down upstairs here at the round table and try to get a general consensus on what makes sense. This is something, Mr. Feint, if you don't mind me asking, we've been talking about this for approximately, a week and a half now, I think? 2 weeks? Yes, sir.
I've been dealing with this for 4 or 5 years on this issue.
Right,
so
well, that
that's
was
why I'm
another,
bringing it up.
yeah, sure, then, and that was another questioner, Commissioner Angel, was that, and Mr. Feint's here in the audience tonight, one of the biggest questions he had, and I think his exact statement was, is it wasn't fair to him, it wasn't fair to Snake Creek, and it wasn't fair to the rest of the neighbors that it's taken this long to try to find a resolution.
I understand. It's same as it's not unfair to the people that have to put up with this in their area.
Sure.
Yeah, but this regulation, it just gives Snake Creek a path. It doesn't say, hey, here you go. They have to go through a process, and we get to set conditions on them at a time if it comes to where we are approving them.
Correct.
This is just a path tonight. That's it.
Yeah, they may not meet the requirements even going forward from that.
It's
I'll
just
get to
a,
that part. I just want to get to my part. So I still want to see something added that if a complaint comes through, I'm the one that's there 2 to 5 o'clock in the morning with these people when I get a call. Now, the noise, the banging, everything that's going on after fly, which still doesn't make sense to me about this, the way they do the testing of the noise. But you have to be there in order to experience. So if a complaint comes through, and I brought many of them through after fly, and nothing's ever been added to it. So I want to make sure that the people that I represent in that area have a voice, that we are looking at it finally.
I'm new to this, but don't we have an enforcement officer on call?
Yes.
So if there's a noise complaint,
The enforcement officer comes, leaves, and it starts back up.
So,
Commissioner Sweeney?
I've had this discussion for the last 4 or 5 years, and it's not just Firefly. It happens throughout the entire county, and it's a money issue to where if we want to put somebody on call, it's going to be 5% on call, pay them. They will not work during the day. They will be on call and stay home at night. Can't go out, can't drink, can't do anything but be on call. I've done it for 40 years. You would have to pay them to be on call. It's a money issue that we've never agreed to in this body, to pay the money to put inspection officers on call.
And that happened when Jim Hosfeld was here. He asked for that. Okay, as a former police officer.
I asked for it when Brad Eby was here, so.
Well, I asked for it long before that too, for other things, but the Firefly is in that area. Those people need relief.
I get it, and
I just can't see, we have a complaint process, okay? So to get back to the complaint process with conditional use, my concern is when we have a conditional use and they don't follow through, are they gonna get a cease and desist and stop, period. Or if they're going to be able to continue if they sue us, so they can continue to go on to court. That's what we do. But is a court case involved?
It depends on circumstances. That is not an across the board. If someone is in violation and is working to get compliant, then unless there is a life safety concern, we allow them to continue. With respect to on-call pay, Commissioner Sweeney is correct. We are not budgeted to have officers on call all of the time. Nope. If we know about an event in advance, for example, with Afterfly, we know about it. Right. We do have folks on call. So we've got some money for special events that we know about.
Just special events that we know ahead of time.
Right. Because I've got to be able to schedule them.
But a dog barking at 2 o'clock in the morning is not a special event that our enforcement officers, if they were on call 24 hours a day, would be able to respond to.
They can't respond to it because the police, unless they see the dog barking, can't respond to that. They won't take it to court because we lose in court.
Police won't respond to a dog barking at 2 o'clock in the morning. Our enforcement officers would be required to because of our noise ordinance. State police will not enforce Kent County noise ordinances, period. Kent County code enforcement officers can respond to noise ordinances, but at 2 o'clock in the morning, you're not calling up Shannon Morris and say, hey, leave your house and go, because he's not being paid to do that. But if we paid them to do that, they would.
This is taking a totally different direction from what you're trying to mix apples and oranges here, Jody. And I'm not going to give it up for the people I serve in that area. So there's nothing wrong with adding a complaint process to our ordinance.
We have a complaint process.
It's not written.
Yes, it is.
It's in violations,
Complaint process in our policies.
It's not a zoning, that's not a zoning
issue,
question.
Mr. Angel, we do have a complaint process because I can
all the
personally
time.
tell you the complaints that I give to her. And I think with MGov now, there's even, the process now is online for the complaint process as of what, the beginning of February?
Yes.
So there is a complaint process, but I don't believe, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I don't think a complaint process is part of a zoning ordinance.
No.
Before that all took place, before we had somebody going out, there was no complaint process. None at all.
I have the access.
Jody, please. The people over here with our concrete guy, the complaint process. We had nobody to go out on a Sunday. The one from Mr. Petitmage at one time stepping in and taking a call. I would have never known about it, except from the people. We don't have anybody to go out on weekends. We don't have anybody at all.
Understand, but that's a monetary issue that this group is going to have to deal with if we want people to go out at night and go out on weekends, I believe, if that's my understanding is correct.
Money's not the issue here.
It's an issue if it's not budgeted.
It's not the issue.
And like I say, I'm new to this, but is this noise ordinance and the process in which, if there's a complaint, is that part of the zoning or is that part of something else that should be discussed at a later date?
The noise ordinance is separate.
Okay.
And
So it has nothing to do with this tonight?
it is not a zoning question. And with respect to after hours, that's a budgeting question. And our guys very often, if there is an accident, if somebody runs into a house, things like that, they'll go out voluntarily when they're called by 911. But those guys aren't paid to be available.
So we can keep your, Mr. Masson, we can keep your issue separate from this zoning ordinance. We can get this on the books and get it going. Needs to be done. Been hanging around much too long, way too long for us to keep holding it up. Your complaint process is a monetary issue because, and I would ask, we can come to a consensus tonight during committee to tell Sarah and Chris to go back and before, because you've already made your budgetary presentation to the county administrator, correct?
Yes.
You've got to come back and modify your budget to include overtime pay and on-call pay for your inspectors so that they can be ready to go out at any time of the night in order to respond to, whether it's firefly, a dog barking. I've had concerts down in, off of Route 15 headed to Milford. There was a concert one weekend, was not planned, just happened. Couldn't get, I think we did get state police to go there finally, but it ended up being a noise ordinance. And that's not even my district, that's Commissioner Scott's district, but they called me. So, just a consensus to send Sarah to, well, Commissioner Masson to come back with a budgetary item for on-call pay and overtime pay for inspectors. And they'll do it if they get paid. I wouldn't expect them to do it unless they got paid. That's only fair.
What are we wanting to send them out on? I'm just curious.
What's that?
What is it that we're wanting to send them out that we're doing this budgetary for?
It's going to be a 5%.
No. I mean,
And
are
what
we
types
sending,
of
are we
events?
sending them out for dogs barking? Because I can tell you now, I dispatch state police constantly, I would say constantly, half a dozen times a month. And state police will go out. The problem is what's code enforcement going to do for a dog barking? I'm just curious. I'm just curious, because if I come to your house and your dog's barking because your neighbor called, and I get there and your dog is no longer barking, what do I have?
You have nothing.
I
But
have
if you
nothing.
get there and that dog's barking, we do have a citation process.
Yeah, you can
that
fine them or
they can
something.
be
Sure.
fined.
I got a question. How many noise complaints did we have last year? How many?
I would have to look. I mean, it certainly doesn't compare to some other, to
Did
the
you give a
property maintenance
roundabout number, or
complaints.
do you have to look it up?
Dozens?
All the others that we deal with.
Geez, I had 5 or 6 myself last year.
Really?
Some constituents calling me and complaining about dogs or a rooster, and I say that facetiously, but a rooster, so cars up and down Irish Hill Road, that's a noise ordinance. There was a house full of airmen who were working on their cars, and they'd get off work at 11 o'clock at night, and at 2 o'clock in the morning, they were out revving their engines, and I ended up going to the commander of the Air Force Base to get them stopped. That's what I had to do. So,
Okay,
it
so,
happens.
so that we can get back on track here with the zoning ordinance, does anyone else have any questions for either Mr. Conley or Ms. Kiefer?
Ms. Masson.
Sir.
We did engage, the Levy Court did, the county administrator, former county administrator, to review it. If, would there be anybody that may have some questions for him? He is here tonight.
Sure, we can do that. Does anybody have questions for Mr. Pettit-Demange, who's in the audience?
I do.
Who said that?
Me.
Oh, Mr. Sweeney.
How's retirement? That's all I had.
Does any other commissioners have any questions for Ms. Kiefer or Mr. Conley? Mr. Hall?
Good job.
Thank you.
Think it's ready to go?
Is everyone comfortable with the language regarding motocross? Is their agreement that's going to stay in the draft?
Yes.
I would say it stays in draft, and then we write the conditions when they put their application in and follow the process.
Okay, I wanted to make sure.
It's just a path. Yeah. They still have to apply, they still have to go through all that.
Okay.
And like I said, we are going to be meeting with both parties.
So do I need a show of hands to introduce this at a public hearing?
Yes, you
Hold
need
it.
consensus to introduce.
I still want to get a question answered.
You didn't raise your hand. Ms.
trying to get your attention.
Vice President Angel?
I just want to find out about the conditional use for motocross. Are they going to be shut down if they don't follow it?
We would, I mean, ultimately, if it is approved as a conditional use, if they do not comply with the conditions, we would, typically, the process has been Levy Court is given the option to revoke the conditional use approval. At that point, we would issue the cease and desist.
Cease and desist then.
Once Levy Court chooses to
Get on the
revoke.
record, because, like I said, I know in the past, when we bring something through, sometimes if they sue us, we let them continue until it goes to court.
That's not an administrative decision. That's completely different from what we do in the department.
That's litigation, right, but they continue to operate. I want to make sure that we stop them from if this goes through, that we have the teeth in it to stop it.
Well, that's not a county excuse me, that's not a county issue, that's a federal.
Not following the ordinance, Judy.
Yeah, I know, but that's a federal.
But keep in mind, this ordinance here is just in general, if I'm correct, for motocross. When Snake Creek comes in for their conditional use and site plan, that's when we set about to determine what other restrictions we want to place on them over and above what's documented here, correct?
Yes, as long as those conditions are reasonable, they should be defensible.
And if we like something that we have forgotten about that really needs to be there, we can always make an amendment to this. Am I correct by saying that?
An amendment to the ordinance, you mean?
Yes.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Always.
So then the other thing that I have, Commissioner Angel, I had spoke with the county attorney, Mr. Eliason. The problem is right now, they've had their cease and desist, they've went to court, and they're still operating. So that did nothing. If I'm not mistaken, Mr. Eliason, you can help me along with this here a little bit. So basically what happens at this point is the whole time that they're continuing to operate, we continue to try to stack these complaints up until we decide to take them back to court again. Am I correct by saying that?
Well, that was one strategy.
Yeah. Then
That was a strategy that was articulated before we had really thought about the possibility of creating a conditional use option for them and other motocross uses. Because as some of you will recall, we got hung up before in a zoning change to IG, which I think was untenable probably for a lot of reasons.
So with talking with the county attorney and what we felt that I think more effective path would be to do something of this nature, to where we can kind of come up with some strengthening conditions that make sense, that Mr. Feint and the neighbors that he represents, Mr. Vinnie, who owns Snake Creek, and with the county attorney, et cetera, and the planning, et cetera, would make sense to where we can put something together, try to find resolution. Now, I can say this, and I'll say this on open forum, that if they choose not to comply, I will be the one that sits here to this table and makes a motion to revoke them. I have no problem with that, none at all. They need to comply with whatever we put down that is agreed to, and if they can't do that, then we can stop wasting everybody's time and just call it quits. I'm okay with that too. But I think we're being more than fair by coming with this ordinance, giving them the opportunity. Now the ball's going to be in their court whether they comply with it or not.
Vice President Angel?
And since Mr. Pettimaj was beneficial in helping us on this process, I'd like to know how he's come down and see if there's anything we missed or anything that he would like to inject.
Mr. Pettimaj, would you like to come down?
Good evening, everyone. It's good to see everyone. Thank you. I hope you all received the memo that I prepared, but your discussion would suggest to me that you probably haven't. Have you? Did you receive the memo that I wrote?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. So, and everyone's good with everything on that? Otherwise, if you'd like, I could go through it with you, or if you're satisfied with the current status, we can dispense with that. It's up to you all. I don't want to make this meeting long. There were a few things that I think that it should be pointed out, but if I'll take your lead, Madam Chairperson.
Commissioner Hall?
Well, just a quick show of hands. Did everyone get a chance to read the memo?
Yeah.
Because I don't want it read to me. And because we've reached a certain point here, I feel like we were this close to being prepared to move forward. So I don't need to hear anything. I read it, considered the recommendations, and I'm prepared to move forward, but I'll step back.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Pettimaj?
Go ahead, Mr. Pettimaj, please. I'd like to hear what you have to say.
Okay, well, just a few highlights in the definition section. There is currently a definition that's included. It was already deleted. It's in the document. It needs to be taken out before it's introduced. That was shown as a miss. And then there are two definitions that I think are somewhat of a conflicted definition. The basement definition, the change there that's proposed, there's an exhibit in the ordinance in the back that graphically defines what a basement is, and it would conflict with the definition that's proposed. That was on the first page of my memo. And then similarly, there's a definition for front lot line. Front lot line, it's lot line, comma, front. And it's been in the code for decades. And the proposed change would, and just so everyone understands what it does, the reason it's worded the way it is today is for every lot, there has to be one front lot line so that there's one rear lot line. And the definitional change would say any corner lot would have two front lot lines. And that means they'll have two rear lot lines and no side lot lines. And what does that do? And you have there's a lot of interplay between these definitions. It would create lots that would have a smaller building area because the rear setbacks are bigger, much bigger than the side yard setbacks. It's a technical thing. My suggestion on that is just keep the definition the way it exists. It's been there forever, and it does no harm. Those are minor things. Throughout my memo, I documented the sections that Sarah already referenced that they've addressed. And I did comment on the motocross with respect to noise. And I'm just going to state this. It refers to Chapter 161, which is your noise ordinance. My professional opinion would be your noise ordinance is ill-prepared currently to manage this type of use. It would probably be best for Levy Court to look at that noise ordinance and make some adjustments that will more effectively deal with this type of use. Because let's face it, the issue with this is noise. It's not the appearance, it's not anything else, it's the noise. And right now, if we consider this just motor vehicles, our noise ordinance would basically exempt any activity, any enforcement activity during the daytime. If we say, okay, it's not a motor vehicle, we're going to hold it to the other standard. It says that a noise disturbance is anything that's only 10 decibels above the ambient noise. Well, we should probably know what motocross is today so that you can maybe make some adjustments to the code, because you may end up in a situation where you approve something that could never comply with your current code from a noise standpoint. That's a concern, and I just put that in there in a couple different places here. I'm just behoove you, take a look at your noise ordinance, maybe have some data about the use, about the area you're talking about, the baseline noise, and then what does motocross do to that? Because you may find that it doesn't comply today. And you may want to try to make an adjustment for this type of use. So I'll leave that in your hands. And the other biggest concern for me, and it's referenced throughout here, and there are other small things, but the big thing is the bulk standards changes. Right now, with respect to the growth zone, you don't need to go through a bunch of different code sections to find the setbacks or the bulk requirements. There's one table in the ordinance. And the proposal isn't merely relocating those standards, it's changing those standards. It's increasing impervious cover. It's increasing setbacks in various locations. There are a lot of changes to the bulk standards besides just repositioning them in the code. And at minimum, I think Levy Court should know that, understand it, because ultimately when someone has an issue, they're going to be addressing it with you all. And that kind of transcends the whole document. Wherever there are bulk standards, there are changes to the bulk standards. And the one that really surprises me is the increase to impervious cover in virtually throughout every zoning category. You know, the tendency and the movement has been to protect our water resources, and what impervious cover does in a negative way to groundwater recharge, to stormwater runoff, to the frequency of flooding and all the rest, well documented, and it's all related to the intensity of development. And so that's one that I just, I didn't hear any explanation why we're doing that. And I think, you know, if I was a commissioner, I'd probably want to know why we're doing that. And so I would just, you know, it's in my memo. I don't need to read it. I'm not going to read it, Commissioner Hall. It's there. I hope that you take it seriously, because it is a significant issue. There are other minor things, but that's the biggest issue for me with the change here. I think it can be addressed. I think you can keep the bulk standards the way they are and adopt the rest of the ordinance. And that's what I recommend. And so my advice to Levy Court with respect to the growth zone is to retain Chapter 205, 397.2.c, which is the table that has the bulk standards in it. And I would also recommend that you retain attachments 1 through 6, which are the current bulk standard tables that are concisely placed in the ordinance that are there for anyone to see today. So that's all. Other than that, I appreciate the opportunity, and if there's any further questions, I'm here to answer them. Otherwise, I'll have my seat.
Does anyone have questions for Mr. Pettit-Amaj?
No, but I do think they're very valid concerns after hearing them. I mean, reading them is one thing, but then hearing them is another thing. And especially the ones in respect to the front yard and side yards and all that, back rear yards. That, after hearing it, I read it and I couldn't picture it, but now after hearing what he said, it makes sense. And then the other thing we really need to be on top of is the what concerns the motocross track, because that's coming real soon. So we need to.
I think on the noise ordinance part, where it's the review the chapter 161, I think that's what we were talking about earlier, that the conditions for the motocross have to be clearly delineated, especially because of the noise theory. So I agree.
That is correct, and we also have a decimal reading that they've already done one test out there. The problem is it doesn't display how many bikes were running when they did the test.
Right.
Yeah.
So what I was going to recommend, along with discussing things with Mr. Fine, is to have them run a test with 30 bikes running. I'm sure they can get 30 bikes out there running. So let's do the test at 30 bikes running. That'll give a pretty clear picture of what it is and what the reading is and where it's at.
If I may address that, Commissioner Scott, that's exactly what I recommend. You need to know what it is without and what it is with.
Mm-hmm.
And if you find that the ambient noise increases by 20 decibels, well, your code will prohibit the use.
Correct.
As it's currently written.
Correct.
But you may want to amend it or to make a special carve out for this type of use as a special recreation use or something like that. That would acknowledge that they do have, higher noise impact, and you can add, the other conditions you talked about, hours of operations, days of the week, times of the year, all those sorts of things are valid conditions. But you need to have the backbone for that noise thing, because that is the big issue with this.
Yeah, that's about 95% of the problem is the noise.
Yeah.
We've talked a little bit about the sound density in walls. We've talked about buffers. We've talked about mufflers, all this stuff. And what it's going to come down to, Mr. Pettit-Amaj, to be honest with you, is whether they comply or not. And if they choose not to comply, then I think that we revoke things and call it a day.
But the noise ordinance is separate from the zoning ordinance, so with the zoning ordinance, all we're doing is giving them a path. Then after they get their path, now they've got to meet all this other stuff, and we can address that noise ordinance at a different time, because it's noise ordinance and no part of this zoning.
Right, but it does reference it. And so what I suggested was that if you adopt it like this, which is fine, you don't entertain any applications until you take a look at the noise ordinance and make the adjustments you might need to make.
Okay, so at issue is the lot line front, the noise ordinance, and also the bulk.
That lot line thing, after thinking about it, there's a property in my neighborhood that would largely affect negatively the rest of the neighbors. And I think we need to address that.
Ms. Kiefer?
If I could, after seeing the memo, I would recommend not altering the front lot line definition, but rather the rear lot line, because that's the question. Which one is the rear lot line? It's the opposite of the shortest frontage. So in the version to be introduced, we've actually included that language, which should clarify all of that. It'll solve that problem.
So you will correct?
It's
or
effectively,
make
I've
a
already
change
written
to the
it.
rear
It's
lot line?
Okay. It addresses it. With respect to the basement, I would suggest taking that graphic out, because the definition is accurate as reflected in the building industry today. The graphic is not. I would simply take the graphic out.
Delete the graphic from the basement?
Yep. With respect to the noise ordinance, certainly I would not object to an overhaul. That ordinance has been around for a while. I don't know that it's ever gone through a review. It does, however, allow for specific exemptions for certain events. So it does allow a little bit of leeway. With respect to the bulk and area standards, we've made our position fairly clear, I think. With respect to impervious cover, that certainly appears to be the direction the Levy Court has been leading over the years, to create a little more flexibility with impervious cover. And I will assure you, I've had this conversation more than once with Jared Atkins at the Kent Conservation District, since they're the ones responsible for stormwater. And thank you. I went so far as to say, Sussex County doesn't regulate impervious cover. What if we didn't, right? What difference would it make in stormwater design for quantity and quality? And he said none at all. So I would suggest that increasing allowable impervious cover by a few percentage points, at least according to the engineer responsible for stormwater, does not pose a threat. And with excellent recharge areas, that's governed entirely separately. So the various limitations there stay, or you can design your way out of it. But those standards stay. Thank you.
Commissioner Hall, do you have a question?
No, just really it comes down to request for waiver, right, for impervious cover. So by allowing some more flexibility, we're just reducing.
Yes.
Because we're likely to just approve these. So it's just.
They are routinely approved. And in the places where we suggested changes in the actual setbacks, it's because of what we see in the office. It's what people are bringing to us. And it becomes a cost benefit to people. What is the benefit of larger setbacks, or can we accommodate with slightly smaller setbacks? So that was the goal.
Any other questions before I attempt to summarize?
I think, Mr. Pettit-Demas, thank you very much for your expertise, and Sarah, thank you and your office for a job well done as well.
All the best.
So in summary, I would need a show of hands to move forward with the following changes to the existing document. Delete the graphic on basement, clarify rear lot line. Also, probably a very intensive review of Chapter 161, noise of the Kent County Code to get, especially for motocross, a baseline. And then probably have to make an adjustment in the chart that we have. Mrs. Kiefer?
Can I just clarify?
Yes.
Are you saying to hold off on this ordinance until we do a review of 161?
It's separate.
No, no, no.
Okay, I just wanted
No,
to
no,
be,
no,
I wanted to be
no, I
certain.
don't want to hold off on the ordinance. I just want to make sure I pointed out everything that all the commissioners have said that we need to address, but more importantly, to make sure that we do review the Chapter 161 noise of the Kent County Code. Can I have a show of hands to move forward with LC 2304? I think we have 5 and 2. Now, the other thing, it's not on the agenda, but we talked about it, is for Mrs. Kiefer to look at her budget to determine how much money she would have to add into the budget to allow for on-call inspections. Do we have a show of hands for that? 7 up? What'd I forget? What'd I forget?
I think the on-call inspections took care of Mr. Angel's concerns.
Sorry?
The on-call took care of your concerns, correct?
I can't hear you.
The on-call took care of what your concerns were for the...
That's one of them, yes.
Yes, okay. And then, Mr. Pepper, yours was taken care of with the rear lot lines, correct?
Any other?
Sounds like it.
Did I forget anything?
I'm relying on your notes.
Pardon me?
I'm relying on your notes.
Not her memory.
Right.
Well, no, I try to make the notes so I don't forget anything. Any public comments?
I'd like to speak.
Mr. Fine?
Sure.
My name's Matt Fine. I live at 4330 Big Stone Beach Road, Melford. I own property over on Coondan Road, which is next to this bike track. I'm gonna be very honest with you, very disappointed with y'all's decision tonight. I don't think you guys are taking into account everything that goes along with this bike track. By creating a pathway that you've created for them and a lighter zoning requirement, you're now gonna allow this to be anywhere in this county, or a very vast majority of this county, okay? And I'm telling you, you don't want this. It's very, very simple. You don't want it. This group in general, I'm not gonna speak for all groups that might be motocross, but this group in general does not follow the rules. They don't care about your rules. They have shown it over and over again. In the 2 years of this whole process, trying to get this thing dealt with, they don't care. They've had a cease and desist since July, August, whatever. Keep operating. Operating today. Operated Saturday. Operated Sunday. Operated yesterday. Okay? I went to my place this afternoon to try to walk around and collect my thoughts on what I wanted to say tonight, because I thought I was going to get the opportunity to speak tonight before you guys made your decision. Okay? Pretty well, what I'm seeing, I've wasted 2.5 hours of my time sitting up here tonight at this point. That being said, I go over there on a Tuesday afternoon to walk my 175 acres that's generally quiet. Just to think, all right? Walk out there, what do I hear? Motorcycles riding, okay? Might have only been 1 or 2, but that's what you have to deal with. You never get away from it, okay? That group, they don't care. It's very basic. They don't care. Whatever rules you come up with, they are not going to follow it. They have not proven that they're going to follow anything at this point. All right? You're making a huge mistake. As far as the basic requirements, okay, I don't know how that's all going to apply. 10 acres isn't big enough. I'm going to tell you that much right now. They have 16.5 acres, and it's not big enough for what they're trying to do and what they want to do. Okay? Lights. That's a horrible idea. All right? I have known since day one when they started this whole process that lights was the next thing. It's bad enough that I got to listen to this stuff and all the neighbors have to listen to this stuff all weekend long, all through the hours thing, out there till 1, 2 o'clock at night with bulldozers grading their track, all right, doing all this kind of things to disturb everybody around there. Nobody around there can get away from this stuff. What we do on our properties does not or should not affect them. Unfortunately, everything that they do on their property affects all of us. That's not fair, okay? And by creating a pathway that you've done tonight or starting this process tonight, In some ways, I hope to God that somebody else puts one of these motocross tracks in your backyard so that you guys can listen to this. And I hate to be that kind of person, okay? But I have dealt with this stuff for over 2 years now, all right? So what was there prior to this group being there was by no means great, but it was definitely tolerable. And that's why there was never the complaints about it before, because everybody around there, they didn't like it, but it was tolerable. It was on a much smaller basis. This group is taking it to a whole new level. And the only thing, as far as I'm concerned, what this group is doing tonight is you're just saying that whatever the county rules are, we went through this process. They were supposed to have the light industrial zoning to operate. We went through this. You guys denied it. You did your jobs. You did the right thing. It was denied the way it was supposed to. But by allowing these other circumstances to happen, allow this place to happen, you are basically saying that no matter what anybody wants to do in this county, despite what the rules may be, we will change it and make it happen so that they can operate. That's wrong. I'm sorry. I have spent too much time and too much money to enjoy my property, and that's all I want to do, all right? I don't want to bother anybody else. I don't want to care about what anybody else is doing on their property. But unfortunately, I have to deal with it nonstop, and it's not fair. And I would ask that any one of you here, when you make these votes on this stuff, you think about this stuff. You think about, would you want this in your backyard? Do you want this in your district? Do you want your people calling you and complaining? Because that's what's going to happen. Every time I read the news, every time I hear of all these different people in Sussex County, Kent County complaining about all the things around them because they moved here from other places and they don't like the noise or they don't like the things that are going on. I'm telling you right now, this is what you're going to have. It's not going to get better. You are not making anything better here, all right? And I'm sorry if I sound upset about this, but I'm beyond upset, to be perfectly honest with you, all right? I'm 2.5 years invested in this, fighting this, and here we are. I was told in July, when this thing was denied, that this was a done deal, all right? Not that it matters to any one of you, but I was waiting to buy more property around there, all right? I've signed up to spend almost $500,000 more money on more property around it because it was my understanding when it was denied in July that it was denied, that this was a done deal. So now I'm spending $500,000 on property around something that I can't even stand to go over to right now. It's not fair. I'm not asking for a favor. I'm not asking, I don't think, for anything above and beyond. I just want to be able to use my property for what I bought it for and what I intended it for. And you're taking that away from me.
Mr. Fine, just for clarification, what is your preference? Is your preference for us to just let it continue like it is?
No, not at all.
I mean, because I thought we was under, I thought we had a clear understanding with things. So I guess, and I understand your frustration. I totally agree with it. But I mean, my question to you as Levy Court, would you prefer for us to create this path so that when they violate it, we can revoke it and move forward, which I think will be somewhat quicker of a process, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Lyson? Or would you prefer us just to withdraw this and just let them ride?
My problem with this is that my fear, okay? Now look, I don't blame anybody at this table for where we are right now individually. I'm sorry, I don't do it. I blame other people that were here prior. I blame other conversations and promises, and I've been told by multiple members of this whole group in here that promises were made that probably shouldn't have been made and all these other things. And I don't blame you guys for that, okay? And it's not fair that you guys have to somehow clean it up, all right? But I don't know that I trust or believe in this system up here enough after what I've seen for the last 2.5 years to trust that by creating a pathway for them, okay, that they're just going to magically happen and that you guys are going to enforce it and deal with it. Because I'm sorry, I haven't seen it yet, okay? I know that there's a lot of ways and legal things that have to go on. I've been talking to Mr. Lyson, I've been to court, I've done all these different things to try to help the situation, and I've tried to be fair to Snake Creek as much as I possibly can, okay? I'm not asking for favors for them or anything like that. I'm just asking to be able to utilize my property. That's all I'm asking, okay? I just don't know that I trust it. Now, hopefully, you guys will prove me wrong, and then, that I can trust you, but I have a hard time trusting after what I've seen for the last 2.5 years, okay? There's been a lot of BS that has been put out from here, from Snake Creek, and from other people that has gone along with this stuff that has, as far as I'm concerned, by kicking this can down the road, which is what has happened for the last 2.5 years, you allowed that Snake Creek to get bigger, okay? I was told from the beginning of this that they weren't supposed to grow any bigger once they applied for their application originally a year and a half ago, that they were going to allow them to operate at their current status, but they weren't allowed, they just kept getting bigger. So the longer they took through planning and zoning, take 9 months to make their decisions, to go through all this other stuff. For 9 months, they got bigger and bigger and bigger, got more following, got more support from the public and everything else, and here we are now. And now, it appears to me that you're just making the pathway easier in some ways, okay? I don't know what else to say. I really don't, okay? This is your guys' decision. You have to make it, okay? But you better think long and hard, in my opinion, about this pathway that you're creating, okay? I don't think that those baselines that are up there are remotely even close.
No, they're not.
To where you need to be.
No, they're,
okay?
they're absolutely not.
They're just baselines in a pathway.
Yeah, the conditions still have to be set.
You remember talking to me?
I do remember talking to you.
Okay, and some of your concerns was E&S and stuff, and I told you the E&S out there was horrible. By this pathway and them having to apply, now that comes something into the conditions that now they have to control that E&S. They can't just have that dirt running everywhere into the ditches and everything. This is a pathway to put restrictions on them. Otherwise, they're going to ride with, because it's their property, they can ride with themselves and their friends and ride outside the hours that we are talking about restricting them to. Just the same way as I'm sure on your property, as much property as you have, you got four-wheelers. You don't ride on your property with four-wheeler?
I have an ATV that I ride around, but I'm not riding around making a bunch of noise on it, okay? I don't invite people over to ride on my property. I don't do anything like that, and none of the neighbors around there do either, okay? The problem with all of this is there's no faith amongst me and the neighbors that this process will work out. None, because Snake Creek has not proven at any point that they're willing to work with anybody, period. It's all about them, and it always has been, okay? Period. That's the end of it. The pathway that you guys are trying to create, I understand what you're saying, okay? I understand what you're saying, but I don't trust it to the fact that it's going to be enforced, okay? This whole decibel thing as far as with the bike tracks, getting 30 bikes out there. Let me tell you what they're going to do, all right? I can tell you right now. They're going to put 30 bikes out there, and they're going to put the 30 quietest bikes they can find, okay? Just like when they invited Mr. Scott over to come over there and see all the things, they had the little kids out there on the little bikes. Yes, I agree. That's the cutest little thing in the world, to watch those little bikes ride around and don't make hardly any noise. But the minute you guys leave, okay, I mean, the public, people that need to hear this stuff leave, then the big bikes come out, okay? That's when it happens. These guys aren't stupid, okay? They're playing the system. It's as simple as that, all right? And I just don't have the faith in the county that they're going to fight it back. Prove me wrong. I hope to God you do, all right? Because the only thing I want is to be able to enjoy my property. I don't care about seeing them ride their bikes. That doesn't bother me. It's the noise. That's what it is. It's the noise. They don't see it as a problem. They don't. They think that listening to a bunch of damn dirt bikes ride around is the greatest thing in the world. They like the noise. That's part of the excitement to them. If it wasn't, they wouldn't turn them up as loud as they do. All right? Find a solution to it. But I don't think that I don't think that the county has the ability to enforce it. Mr. Angel made a very good point about calling us up. When they go and raise all this hell on a Saturday afternoon, the time I call somebody, the time they send somebody out, they're going to be gone. They're not stupid. That's what's going to happen. I've watched it happen for 2.5 years. I watched 3 weeks after the cease and desist went out. What they do? 30 people out there. They don't care. Flat out don't care. That's all I have to say. I don't know. I don't know what else. I think, again, I wasted my time coming here tonight. I do appreciate you guys' time letting me speak, but there it is. All right?
Thank you, Matt.
Any other public comment? At this point, we'll adjourn the Planning Services Committee.
Do we have any need for executive session tonight?
No.
Okay. At this time, we are adjourned. He's absolutely right. He is. He's absolutely right. we're gonna open up the door for all these other bike tracks to be around King County. Look at all the dirt pits that are around King County. And then we're all gonna have complaints, not just Bob.
And I was out to Mark Lloyd's house not long ago. They ride four-wheelers all the time, about 20 of them, right through their woods and stuff. Just the neighbors out in Black Bottom ain't complaining.